Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you notice, I've already cut my hair because it's gotten ridiculously long, and I finally had the nerve to go and see a barbershop just to kind of get it over with. Um, but I am also going to try to record this video with doing uh, pretty much zero editing, no jump cuts or anything, mostly because I've been having issues with my laptop. It's gotten the blue screen of death, which kind of sucks, and I'm trying to fix that, and so I'm recording on another device, which may not be able to install some of my editing software. So I'm going to try to do this free-handed. But what I wanted to talk about today was kind of a discussion that I went through last night on my Facebook feed, and someone had posted some things about them hearing customers or people at the grocery store wanting to have themselves be called doctor while being addressed. And I guess he wasn't a big fan of that, but there were some people commenting, and I sort of added my thoughts to the thread as well. Basically, the discussion boiled down to what are the merits of, I guess, being a real doctor as an MD versus those with a PhD. So I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on that as well, kind of compare the two types of degrees, what is uniquely difficult about each of them, and also provide some hopefully good insight for those of you who are interested in learning about these degrees, or if you're interested in pursuing one or the other. So before I begin, remember to please like this video and subscribe to the channel for additional material science and graduate school content. So basically, an MD is a doctor of medicine, and you typically would earn this degree in order to practice medicine, to prescribe medication, and to treat people in a health or clinical setting. And this is usually accomplished by obviously going to college, earning a four-year degree, and then applying to medical school, which then takes another 4 years to finish. So you will go through a mixture of classes and clinical training sessions in order to then be granted an MD. Sometimes you'll also have to go through what's called a residency, which is a period that can last anywhere between 3 to 6 or 7 years, depending on whatever specialization that you're aiming to get. And that's just to serve as additional training as a practicing doctor, but under the supervision of a more senior physician. Now, of course, I'm not a medical student, so I can't really speak to the nuances and the little itty-gritty details about medical school. I do know a lot of medical students. I have friends who are either in medical school or have just finished and are going through the residencies right now. For those types of questions, I would refer maybe sending me an email and I can ask them, or you can go check out other places on YouTube as well. Now, for a PhD, you are also earning a doctorate, and it's a doctorate of philosophy, or in other words, a doctor of learning. Now, PhDs are basically the pinnacle of academic degrees, and they can span all of the different fields that currently exist. And in order to earn a PhD, one again must have to go through a 4-year bachelor's program, and then go apply for a doctoral program, which can take anywhere between 3 to 6 or 7 or sometimes 8 years. And this highly depends on what type of field. So in my field of engineering, typically PhDs will take, on average, 5 years to complete if you don't have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or if you're just coming straight out of your bachelor's. Sorry, it was a little brain fart there. But for the reason why this is because you're not going through a standardized curriculum. You're not asked to take a certain amount of classes and then for a certain period, and then also do research. It all kind of depends on the nature of your work and your study. Sometimes you might take fewer classes, and sometimes you might take more, depending on what you're trying to learn. And then your research also is really open-ended, so there's no clear timeline as to when you will be able to complete your work. So the main differences between the two is not only in the type of work that you practice, but also how you were trained. And I guess depending on who you talk to, you might get biases as to who thinks which degree is harder. And it's, again, I'm going to play devil's advocate for both sides and just kind of stay neutral because um, it's really dependent on what you're trying to do. Like, there's some PhDs that might be easier to obtain compared to an MD, but then also MD overall could also be seen as easier to complete because the direction is very clear cut. So first, I want to talk about the main differences. So an MD, you are learning um, vast amounts of medical knowledge and trying to use that in an applied clinical setting. So taking knowledge that already exists and basically figuring out how to connect everything together in your head and figure out ways to diagnose diseases and to treat patients, and also pick up a bunch of other soft skills during medical school in order to be an effective doctor. But essentially, you're using information that exists in an applied setting. Now, a PhD is a degree in which you don't exactly have all of the knowledge in your particular field of study, and your job is to then create and advance that knowledge that you're trying to study. So, in other words, you're trying to push the boundaries of what we know, what our knowledge level is in certain fields, and you're creating knowledge. And in some regards, creating knowledge is far more difficult than, say, applying knowledge. So anyone can memorize a giant list of facts, but creating those facts and telling people that these are true based on years of research is certainly a lot harder in some points of view. Now, also the way the schooling is conducted is also different because for medical school, you once you get in, and it's really hard to get in, depending, I guess, on where you go and also what kind of background that you have. It's certainly places that prestige for people who get into medical school who are seen as very intelligent, very well off in their careers, especially because they typically earn very high incomes, albeit having a lot of debt through medical school as well. So there's a certain level of status that society places on medical doctors, whereas for PhDs, you are in a scenario where you're trying to advance a field, and again, the direction isn't as clear cut because your research could either go really well, really bad. So the topic that you study may end up taking 3 years if you're a really good researcher and everything goes well, and maybe you get lucky, or it could take several years, and probably cost a lot of your time and income potential too, because it also depends on what you study, but your income might be significantly lower than that of an MD. So that is a point of consideration when comparing the two degrees, because you have instances where people will maybe say that PhDs aren't real doctors and that doctors actually can go and save lives and do things in the medical profession that are useful to society, as opposed to someone who can just spew out facts and do research. But honestly, you need both, because without the MDs, you don't have people who are trained and qualified to go and treat people and keep people from getting sick or treating sicknesses. But also, if you don't have those scientists, those with medical or biological or chemical PhDs, then you won't also have the knowledge needed to go and develop or perform those procedures and treatments. So when people argue which is harder, I think it's really subjective, because again, creating knowledge is hard, and learning basically an encyclopedia of medical knowledge is also pretty hard. So it also depends on the kind of mindset that you have. So if you're better at memorizing things, or if you're someone who is fairly creative and wants to develop things a little bit more. So then you have what I consider a special class of people who are the MD PhDs. And again, try to look for other resources when going and doing like a search for these terms. But MDs, PhDs earn both an MD and a PhD. So they're qualified to be a practicing physician, but also qualified to do high-level and independent research. So these types of degrees typically take a minimum of 8 years because they sort of interlock and mix in PhD training along with medical training. And I actually have two friends right now who are going through those types of programs. So one went into a straight full-on MD PhD program at the University of Utah, and her program is supposed to last for 8 years. Whereas my other friend who is on the East Coast, he went through and did a PhD in about 5 years, and then applied to medical school to get additional medical training in 4 years, so he can become a physician scientist. So this is an alternate route where you don't have to actually apply to an MD PhD program, but you can just go do both things separately. Now, MD PhD programs are notoriously hard to get into, so you would need to be someone of like a top tier caliber as an undergraduate in order to get into one of these programs, and also be very committed because it does take 8 years to finish. So my personal thoughts is that PhDs are very much doctors. Don't discount the difficulty of doing one, even if it's in a field that is considered less rigorous. So it's comparing apples to oranges to bananas. Like if you compare engineering to psychology to economics, they're all different. They're all difficult in their own ways. And honestly, there is a lot of difficulty on the mental side too, because you don't have a clear-cut direction. You always have to maybe think about your research problem, and you typically go and commit and a massive amount of hours towards your work. So it's like that work never really escapes your mind. Whereas if you're going to medical school, if you're not in classes or in clinicals, technically you're free. So it's like they're busier in a more regularly scheduled circumstance, where it's like you're going to be really busy, maybe working anywhere from or studying like 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day. But then it's like those days where you're not actually doing any of that, you are free. You don't have to worry about doing anything medical school related. Whereas PhDs, like depending on how you compartmentalize your time, you may end up thinking about your problem or research strategy going forward for the next few years. So if you're someone with a lot of patience and creativity, certainly go for a PhD. And I think that there is so much value in doing that degree for advancing your career, and you're certainly not limiting yourself by any means. But again, I can make future videos to clarify that as well. And also do an MD if you want to serve your community, if you are very good at memorizing things, and just be prepared for the rigors of actually getting into medical school, because once you're in, it's very likely that you will succeed in medical school and finish your degree, whereas PhDs, that certainty isn't always quite there. So hopefully that is a quick clarification as to, I guess, what the differences are, and also whether or not one is harder than the other. It's very subjective, and I'll let you guys debate that in the comments below if you choose to do so. So again, thanks for watching, and I hope you stay safe out there, and remember to like and subscribe to this channel. So again, I will try to post these videos a little bit more regularly as I fix some of my tech issues. So stay safe and keep calm next time. Bye.